The traffic light glowed red, casting its color across the hood of my old minivan like a slow-burning warning. I could feel the afternoon heat pressing through the windshield, smell the faint trace of motor oil and the peppermint I kept on the dashboard. Somewhere in the back seat, my 12-year-old grandson, Logan, was too quiet. That was the first sign. We'd just left his school. Usually, he'd talk about soccer or the science fair, his little voice rushing ahead of the traffic. But now he just stared out the window, hugging his backpack as if it could protect him. I glanced into the rearview mirror, that mirror that always told me truths my eyes were too slow to see, and saw his face pale, his lips trembling. "Sweetheart?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. "You feeling sick?" He didn't answer. The light turned green. The horns behind me blared impatiently. I pressed the gas. We rolled forward with the slow river of cars down Main Street, beneath the Dallas sun that made the asphalt shimmer like black water. Finally, in a voice that barely rose above the hum of the engine, Logan said, "Grandma, I have to tell you something." Something in his tone, that small quiver between fear and duty, made my hands tighten around the steering wheel. "Okay, honey, what is it?" He looked up. Our eyes met in the mirror, and for a split second, I saw his father's eyes in that same boyish face. My son's kindness, his trust. But there was terror too. Then he whispered 6 words that froze my blood. "Grandma, it's a trap. Mom tricked you." The words hit me like a jolt of electricity. I slammed my foot on the brake, earning another chorus of honks from behind. The seatbelt dug into my chest, but I barely felt it. "A trap?" I repeated, my voice breaking. "What are you talking about?" Logan leaned forward between the seats, still clutching his backpack. "I heard Mom and Uncle Derek talking last night," he said, voice trembling. They want to hurt Dad." For a heartbeat, the noise of the city disappeared. The radio cut off mid-song. I turned it down without realizing. My throat went dry. "Hurt him? Logan? What do you mean?" He bit his lip so hard I thought he might cry. I couldn't sleep. I went downstairs for water, and I heard Mom on the phone. She said something about fake papers and Mr. Harold and the shareholders meeting next week. Uncle Derek laughed and said everything was ready. He said Dad would look like a thief. The words fell like stones into my chest. My son, Mike, who worked day and night for that company, who still sent me flowers every Mother's Day, being framed by his own wife and her brother. The steering wheel felt slippery under my palms. I pulled the car over to the curb near a row of newspaper stands and turned to look at Logan. His face was ghostly white. "Sweetheart," I said softly, "are you sure about what you heard?" He nodded, his chin quivering. "I didn't want to believe it, Grandma, but they said his name. They laughed about how everyone would think he stole money. I'm scared." "Oh, my dear boy," I whispered, reaching back to take his small, shaking hand. "You did the right thing telling me. You're so brave." He shook his head. "If I tell Dad, he'll be mad. He always trusts Mom." The sadness in his voice was worse than the fear. This child, who should be thinking about homework and cartoons, was carrying the weight of betrayal too big for his shoulders. The car behind us honked again, impatient. I forced myself to breathe, to act normal, to start driving. But my heart hammered so loudly I could barely hear the traffic anymore. Through the windshield, I saw the reflection of a black sedan weaving through lanes behind us. Sleek, tinted, too familiar. For a terrifying moment, it drew close enough that I saw the driver's face. Derek Reed, my daughter-in-law's brother. He didn't smile this time. His gaze was flat, hard, like polished stone, before he sped past and vanished into traffic. "Grandma," Logan whispered, his voice almost breaking. "That's him." I wasn't lying. "I know, honey," I managed, though my mouth was dry. "I believe you." Inside, panic thrashed like a trapped bird. I'd known Derek for years, always showing up to family dinners with a smirk and some new investment tip, pretending to be the clever uncle, and Vanessa. Vanessa, who'd once hugged me on my first night in their home, calling me Mom, saying she was glad I'd never be alone. How could those same smiles hide something so cruel? As we turned onto Willow Lane, the street where my son's house sat, wide lawns, identical mailboxes, a neighborhood that pretended nothing ugly ever happened. I tried to calm my breathing. I couldn't let Logan see me unravel. "Listen to me," I said, forcing steadiness into my voice. "No matter what happens, you stay close to me, all right? You don't tell your mom anything about this. Not yet." He nodded quickly. "Promise?" "Promise." When we pulled into the driveway, the sun was dipping low, painting the windows gold. For a fleeting second, the house looked peaceful. Too peaceful. Then the front door opened, and Vanessa stood there with her arms crossed. Even from the car, I could see her eyes tracking us, calculating. Her smile came late, stretched across her face like something rehearsed. "Traffic rough, Mom?" she asked when I stepped out. Her tone was syrupy, but her eyes were cold. "You should have texted me. I was starting to worry." I forced a smile. "Oh, you know Dallas traffic." Behind me, Logan slid out, hiding half behind my arm. Vanessa's gaze flicked to him, sharp, assessing, before she said lightly, "Long day at school, sweetie." He mumbled something I couldn't hear. Her eyes returned to me. "Did you need something, Mom? Or were you just dropping him off?" That "Mom," so polished, so false, stung worse than any insult. I could almost see the invisible line she was drawing between us, a polite fence that said, "You don't belong here." "Yes," I said quietly, "just dropping him off." "Well then," she replied, her smile tightening. "Thank you. We'll take it from here." She reached out to touch Logan's shoulder. He flinched. I felt his fingers grip mine in panic before he let go and followed her inside. The door closed with the soft final click of a lock. For a moment, I stood there on the porch, staring at my reflection in the glass. The reflection of an old woman clutching her purse, looking like someone who'd lost her way home. My heart pounded, not just from fear, but from fury. Vanessa turned once in the hallway beyond the door, her eyes meeting mine through the glass. There was a faint curve at the corner of her mouth, a smile that said, "I know you know, and it won't matter." I turned away before she could see the tremor in my hands. The hum of the street seemed distant. The cicadas had started singing in the trees, an endless chorus that filled the heavy evening air. As I walked back toward the minivan, I passed the garage and noticed something that stopped me cold. The black sedan Derek had been driving was parked inside, its engine still ticking from heat. So he had been following us. A chill crawled down my spine. I backed away slowly, climbed into my van, and sat there gripping the steering wheel. The neighborhood lights flickered on one by one, each little porch lamp glowing against the dusk. From one of the upstairs windows, I thought I saw a curtain move, a flash of blonde hair, watching. I started the engine, my hands shaking. For the first few blocks, I couldn't tell if I was breathing or not. In the mirror, the last sliver of the house disappeared behind me. That big, perfect house where something rotten was festering beneath the hardwood floors and polite smiles. Logan's voice echoed in my head, trembling and brave. "Grandma, it's a trap. Mom tricked you." 6 words that turned a quiet afternoon into a battlefield. By the time I reached my small rental house across town, the sunset had vanished. The sky was ink, and the city lights blurred through my windshield like smears of tears. I parked, turned off the ignition, and sat in silence. My pulse still raced like I was being chased. That night, I couldn't eat. I couldn't even pray without my thoughts scattering. Every image replayed. Vanessa's smile, Derek's glance, the way Logan's hand trembled when he told me. Somewhere between fear and fury, I made a decision. If what that boy heard was true, I would find out. I would protect my son, even if he didn't believe me. Even if it meant standing alone. I looked at the reflection of my own eyes in the dark window. Eyes lined with years, but still sharp enough to see danger coming. And I whispered into the quiet room, as if answering the boy's warning. All right, sweetheart. If it's a trap, they're not the only ones who know how to set one. When my husband passed, the house felt too big for one person. Mike, my only son, had hugged me at the funeral and whispered, "Mom, you shouldn't live alone. Come stay with us. You'll never feel lonely again." Those words were sunlight through a storm. At first, moving in with him and Vanessa felt like a blessing. Their two-story suburban home smelled of new paint and vanilla candles. Logan ran down the hallway shouting, "Grandma's here," and threw himself into my arms. I thought I had finally found peace after months of silence and widowhood. For the first few weeks, it was almost warm. We cooked together. Vanessa complimented my old chicken and dumplings recipe, though I later realized she never actually ate it. Mike brought flowers for the dining table, and we watched evening news side by side. I told myself, see, this is family. This is home again. But comfort has a strange way of fading, quietly, like heat leaving a room when someone opens a window at night. The first rule came disguised as kindness. One afternoon, I was sitting in the living room, watching Logan build a Lego tower. The front door opened and Vanessa stepped in, still in her pencil skirt, phone in hand. She smiled too sweetly. "Mom, if we have guests, could you rest in your room for a bit? You know, so the living room looks tidy." Her voice was light, polite, yet something inside it scratched. "Of course," I said, smiling back. I thought she was just trying to impress her visitors. But the rule repeated. Each time someone stopped by, Mike's co-workers, neighborhood moms, Derek, she'd find me folding laundry or reading near the couch and murmur the same thing. "Mom, why don't you rest upstairs?" I started to feel like a shadow being moved out of every picture. Then came the second rule. Space management, she called it. One morning she said, "Mom, the upstairs room might be tough for you to climb to every day. There's a cozy little room by the kitchen. It'll be easier for you." I followed her into the narrow space that had once been a storage closet. No windows. The hum of the refrigerator bled through the wall. I opened my mouth to say, "I can handle stairs." But her smile cut the air first. "You'll be closer to us here," she said, touching my shoulder like a nurse calming a patient. So I dragged my suitcase in and unpacked beside the cleaning supplies. That night, lying on the narrow bed, I could hear the kitchen faucet drip. Every drop felt like a clock tick, marking my slow erasure. Family dinners used to be sacred to me, the time when hearts align over a meal. But in this house, the table became a stage. Vanessa sat at the head, Mike to her right, Logan between them. I took the far end. My spot used to be near Mike. We'd share small jokes about the food. One evening, I served Mike a slice of roast, smiling. "Remember this? Your favorite when you were a boy." He smiled faintly, but before he could take the plate, Vanessa spoke. "Oh, Mom, don't trouble yourself. Mike can serve himself. He's a grown man." Her tone was soft. Her eyes were knives. Mike chuckled awkwardly, not seeing the sting. "She just worries about me, Mom. Don't take it the wrong way." I lowered my eyes and cut my own meat in silence. The clink of silverware filled the room like little pieces of glass breaking. From then on, dinners changed. Sometimes she'd forget to call me when food was ready. I'd walk into the kitchen and find them already halfway through a meal. "Sorry, Mom," she'd say sweetly. "We thought you were resting." I began to eat late, alone at the small kitchen table beside the humming refrigerator. My plate warmed in the microwave. Once, as I lifted a forkful of mashed potatoes, I looked at the reflection on the oven door. An old woman eating quietly in a house full of laughter that didn't belong to her. Only Logan refused to follow her rules. He'd sneak down to my little room after dinner, notebook in hand. "Grandma, can you help me with math?" Of course I could. He'd sprawl across the rug while I explained fractions, his pencil tapping in rhythm. Those small hours became our refuge. We laughed, whispered, built a world where warmth still lived. Sometimes I'd tell him stories about his grandfather, how we met at a state fair, how he used to whistle Moon River when he cooked breakfast. Logan would listen with shining eyes, but even that light couldn't stay untouched. One night, Vanessa appeared in the doorway. "Logan, sweetheart, time for bed. Those old stories are just confusing you. You need to focus on things that matter, like your English essays." She smiled at me, polite and poisonous. Logan looked at her, then at me, torn. "It's okay," I said softly. "Go on, dear." When the door closed, the silence pressed down on me so heavy I could barely breathe. Mike remained blind to it all. He worked long hours at the company, chasing a promotion he believed Vanessa had helped him get. Whenever I hinted at how tense things were, he'd sigh. "Mom, Vanessa's under stress. She runs the house, handles my schedules, Logan's school, everything. Please don't read into things. Read into things." I wanted to tell him that reading into things was how women like me survived. That every look, every tone, every rule meant something. But I stayed quiet. He already looked exhausted. The worst moment came the night of their business dinner. I carried a tray of water glasses to the living room, hoping to join them, just to listen. Derek was there, laughing too loudly, talking about shares and projections. Mike looked proud, grateful. Vanessa perched on the armrest like a queen. I placed the tray gently on the coffee table. Would anyone like lemon? Vanessa's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, Mom, the maid could have done that. You shouldn't strain yourself." The maid. It wasn't what she said. It was what she erased. Decades of motherhood, of holding Mike's feverish head at night, of paying for his college books, of raising him after his father died, reduced to the maid. I turned away before anyone could see the tears gathering. The hallway stretched long and cold. Each step sounded like it belonged to a stranger. That night in my small room, I sat awake, staring at the faint light under the door. My hands trembled, not from anger, but from the weight of invisibility. Who was I in this house? A guest? A burden? A memory they hadn't buried yet? The faucet dripped. The air conditioner hummed. Somewhere upstairs, laughter flickered and died. Days blurred into one another. I learned to move quietly, to stay out of the way. Vanessa had achieved what she wanted, a perfectly curated household image, with me edited out like a flaw in a photograph. But Logan still slipped me smiles. Sometimes he'd leave little notes under my door, drawings of us gardening, of me teaching him piano. I kept them in a small box beneath my pillow. They were proof that someone still saw me. Then, one afternoon, I passed the open doorway of the living room and heard a voice that froze me mid-step. Claire, Vanessa's younger sister, was sitting on the couch with her laptop. She was speaking into her phone. "Yes, publish it tonight," she said briskly. "Title it, 'Elderly Woman Causing Trouble in Local Firm's Family.' Add that she might be showing early memory loss." My blood ran cold. She paused, glanced toward the hall, then added, "Trust me, this will make Vanessa look compassionate, like she's caring for a difficult mother-in-law." I felt the wall at my back. My knees wobbled. A moment later, she hung up, closed her laptop, and noticed me. Her smile was syrup. "Oh, didn't see you there, Miss Ellie. What are you up to? Shopping again?" I managed a thin smile. "Just passing by." She shrugged and walked off humming, as if she hadn't just buried me alive with her words. That night, I sat on my narrow bed, the little box of Logan's drawings open beside me. The light bulb flickered overhead. I stared at the wall, where the shadows of the dripping faucet danced. I could almost hear Father Thomas's voice from Sunday Mass. The worst sin isn't hate, it's indifference. In that moment, I realized indifference was exactly what Vanessa wanted to turn me into, a ghost too quiet to notice, too fragile to fight. But as the faucet dripped and the house above me buzzed with life that excluded me, something inside me hardened, like frost forming over glass. If they were going to make me invisible, I would learn to see without being seen. If they thought I was weak, they'd never notice when I started listening. The cold rules of that house had been written by Vanessa, but quietly, in the dark, I decided to start rewriting them. The morning after the rumor reached the market, I woke up before dawn. The house was still asleep. That kind of thick, expensive silence that always felt colder than noise. The smell of coffee drifted faintly from the automatic machine upstairs, programmed by Vanessa's perfect schedule. Even the smell obeyed her. I sat on the edge of my narrow bed, clutching the cardigan my late husband had once worn. I could still feel the shape of his shoulders in it, as if courage could be borrowed from cloth. Today, I told myself, I had to talk to Mike. I'd rehearsed the words all night, whispering them to the shadows. Don't sound hysterical. Stay calm. Speak facts, not feelings. Because feelings, in this house, were treated like broken dishes, quickly swept away before anyone saw the mess. Mike came down the stairs just as the first gold light touched the kitchen windows. His tie wasn't straight. His eyes looked tired. For a moment, I saw the boy he used to be, staying up late to study, too stubborn to admit exhaustion. "Morning, Mom," he said, searching for his keys. "Michael." I used his full name, the way I did when something mattered. "I need to talk to you. It's serious." He stopped, blinking. "Can it wait? I have an early meeting." "No," I said, and my voice came out steadier than I expected. "It's about Vanessa and Derek, about the company." That got his attention. He set down his briefcase but kept his hand on it, as if he wasn't sure whether to stay or run. "What about them?" I took a breath. "Logan overheard them, late at night. They talked about framing you, something about fake documents and a meeting next week. He said Derek laughed about making you look like an embezzler." The words spilled out, trembling, but they were true. Every one of them. For a moment, Mike just stared at me. Then he rubbed his temples and sighed, the way a man sighs at traffic or bad Wi-Fi. "Mom, come on." "I'm not making it up," I said quickly. I heard part of it myself later. Vanessa in the yard, whispering about papers, about a lawyer named Barnes. "They're planning something, Michael. You have to be careful." His eyes hardened. "Mom, please, don't do this." "Do what?" He hesitated, then said softly, "Invent problems. You've been under a lot of stress. You're lonely. Vanessa told me you haven't been sleeping well." My heart clenched. "She told you that?" He nodded, his face full of pity that hurt more than anger. "I know you don't like her methods, but she's been trying to keep things peaceful." "Peaceful?" My voice cracked. "Michael, she's isolating me. She's spreading lies. Even your co-workers." He cut me off, sharper now. "Mom, that's enough. Vanessa loves this family. She wouldn't do anything to hurt me or you. Please, don't drag Logan into your—" I slapped my hand against the counter, the sound startling both of us. "He's not lying." The words burst out before I could stop them. My hands trembled. "He's scared, Michael. Scared of his own mother. He told me everything because you're too blind to see what's happening." Silence. For a moment, even the refrigerator hum seemed to hold its breath. Then his voice dropped low, wounded. "Don't talk about her like that." I saw the wall come down behind his eyes. The one no mother can climb once her son decides to protect his wife over her. I wanted to reach him, to shake him, to remind him who taught him right from wrong. But instead, I just stood there, shaking, while he picked up his briefcase. "I'm tired, Mom," he said. "Please don't make things harder." He walked out the door without looking back. I stood frozen in the hallway. The sound of the engine starting outside felt like the world leaving me behind. When I turned, I saw a small face peeking from the top of the stairs. Logan, eyes wide, lips pressed tight. He had heard everything. He came down slowly, one step at a time, clutching the banister. "He didn't believe you, did he?" I forced a smile that hurt my cheeks. "It's all right, honey. Grown-ups don't always see things clearly." Tears filled his eyes. "Grandma, what if they really hurt him?" I bent down and hugged him tight. "Then we'll protect him," I whispered. "You and me." He nodded, but his small shoulders shook. "Mom's gonna hate me if she finds out I told you." "She doesn't get to decide what's right," I said, even though I wasn't sure I believed it myself. That afternoon, the house was a glacier. When Vanessa returned from her bank appointment, she breezed through the door wearing her signature scent, expensive, floral, and heavy enough to erase the smell of anyone else. "Rough morning?" she asked sweetly, hanging her purse by the door. I didn't answer. She tilted her head, pretending to care. "You look pale. Maybe you should rest." I could feel her eyes on me as she poured herself a glass of water. Every gesture was graceful, but underneath, I saw the steel. "Vanessa," I said quietly, "we need to talk." "Oh?" She turned, her smile polite. "About what?" "About honesty." Her eyes narrowed a fraction. "I'm always honest." I stepped closer. "Then tell me what Derek's doing with the company. Tell me why Logan heard you planning something with Mr. Barnes. Tell me why your brother's car followed us yesterday." Her expression didn't change, but her fingers tightened around the glass until I thought it might break. Finally, she laughed, soft, cruel. "Mrs. Hart, I think you've been watching too many crime shows. Don't mock me." My voice cracked but didn't fall. "You can lie to everyone else, but not me. I was married to a man who thought deceit could stay hidden. It never does." For a long moment, she just stared at me. Then she set down the glass carefully and leaned forward, her smile now razor-thin. "You should be careful, Eleanor," she said. "When people start thinking you're confused or unstable, they stop listening, and that's a lonely place to be." It was a threat disguised as advice. I could feel it like a draft under a locked door. She walked away before I could respond, humming under her breath. Dinner that night was theater again. The perfect set for a family that didn't exist. Only 3 plates were on the table: hers, Mike's, and Logan's. When I stepped into the dining room, Vanessa glanced up with feigned surprise. "Oh, Mom, I told Nora to bring your meal later. You must have missed her." My throat tightened. "I can eat here." Mike didn't look up from his papers. Logan's eyes flicked between us, pleading silently. Vanessa's tone sweetened. "Mom, the kitchen's quieter. You'll be more comfortable there." That sentence broke something inside me. Comfort had become her way of removing me from sight. I walked back into the kitchen, sat at the little table, and ate alone. The clinking of my fork sounded too loud. From the dining room I could hear laughter, forced, brittle, but loud enough to erase mine. I stared at the empty 4th chair and wondered when exactly I had stopped being family. After they went to bed, I took my cardigan and walked into the night. The autumn air bit my skin. I followed the familiar path toward the small church at the corner of the street, the one place that still felt steady. Father Thomas was sweeping the steps, his silver hair glowing under the porch light. When he saw me, he leaned on his broom. "Eleanor," he said gently, "you look troubled." I told him everything. Logan's whisper, Mike's disbelief, Vanessa's smile, the threat hiding behind kindness. He listened without interrupting, his eyes steady. When I finished, my voice was shaking. "What can I do? No one believes me." He thought for a moment, then said, "You are the only one who's seen the truth. Silence is what they want. If you stay quiet, they win. But if you gather proof, facts, not just feelings, truth will speak louder than rumor. I'm just an old woman, I said. I don't have power. You have the heart of a mother, he replied. That's power enough. His words steadied me, even as fear pooled in my stomach. I left the church with a plan forming like a fragile spark. Find evidence, protect Logan, save my son, even if I had to do it alone. On the way home, I saw the light still on at the house next door. Chloe, my young neighbor, stood at her desk surrounded by legal binders. She used to work at a law firm downtown before quitting to freelance. Maybe. I knocked softly. She opened the door, surprised. "Mrs. Hart, it's late. Are you okay?" I hesitated, then pulled from my purse the stack of company papers I'd quietly taken from the dining room table days ago. "Can you look at these? Tell me if they mean anything strange." She ushered me in, scanning the papers under her lamp. After a few minutes, her brow furrowed. "This seal's wrong. And this signature, it's traced, not original." My heart lurched. "You mean they're faking my son's signature?" She nodded grimly. "You need to be careful, Mrs. Hart. Whoever's behind this knows exactly what they're doing." Then she handed me a small USB drive. "If you find more documents or recordings, bring them here. I'll help you build a record." I closed my fingers around the tiny piece of plastic, feeling its weight. So light, yet sharp as a blade. "Thank you, Chloe," I whispered. "I don't know if I can do this." She smiled softly. "You already are." When I returned home, the house was dark except for one faint light upstairs. Through the curtains, I could see Vanessa's silhouette pacing, phone pressed to her ear. I couldn't hear her words, but I didn't need to. Something deep inside me shifted, fear folding into determination. I went to my room, sat on the bed, and placed the USB beside Logan's drawings. Two fragile symbols of truth and innocence, one digital, one drawn in crayon. As I turned off the light, I whispered to the dark, "Tomorrow, they'll still underestimate me. That's good, because it's easier to fight monsters when they don't know you've stopped being afraid." The next few days moved like heavy clouds, slow, gray, and full of pressure. Everyone in the house went about their routines as if nothing had happened, but the air was different. Even the walls seemed to listen. Vanessa floated through the rooms, her heels clicking like a metronome of control. She spoke softly on the phone, never too loud, but every sentence felt rehearsed. Mike left early and came home later, tired, distracted, and unaware of the thin ice under his feet. Logan had stopped talking at dinner altogether, and I had learned to move like a ghost. After Father Thomas's words and Chloe's warning, I knew what I had to do. If no one believed me, I'd make them believe the truth itself. I wasn't strong or young, but I had patience, and patience can be sharper than any weapon. It started with the sound of footsteps in the kitchen. Late one night, when the moon was a thin blade across the window, I heard someone moving downstairs. I slipped from my bed, put on my robe, and followed the sound. Through the cracked door, I saw Nora, the housekeeper, standing near the sink, her back stiff, her hands trembling as she wiped a plate that was already spotless. "Nora," I whispered. She turned sharply, eyes wide with fear, before exhaling in relief. "Mrs. Hart, you scared me. What are you doing up this late?" She hesitated, then pulled a small phone from her apron pocket. "I have something you should hear." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but yesterday, when I was taking out the trash, I heard Mrs. Vanessa and Mr. Derek talking outside. I recorded it. I thought you should have it." My pulse raced. "A recording?" Nora nodded, her hand shaking slightly as she unlocked her phone. Then, through the small, tinny speaker, Vanessa's voice filled the kitchen, calm but venomous. "After this meeting, Mike will lose every ounce of credibility. Once the numbers drop, the board will have no choice but to remove him. The company will be ours." Then Derek's low laugh followed. "And that old woman, she won't even be able to tie her shoes without people thinking she's lost her mind." The sound cut off, but the echo remained, slicing through the silence. I gripped the counter for balance. My throat burned. "Nora," I whispered, "you just saved my family." She shook her head. "No, ma'am. I just did what was right." We stood there for a long moment. Two women who had spent years serving everyone else, now holding proof that could destroy the people we served. I copied the file onto the small USB Chloe had given me. The tiny light blinked once, sealing a piece of truth inside it. The next morning, the whispers began. At the market, where I bought vegetables every Thursday, the vendor I'd known for years gave me a hesitant look. "Mrs. Hart," he murmured, leaning closer, "people are saying you've been making mistakes with money, that you're confused lately." The basket nearly slipped from my hands. I forced a smile. "Where did you hear that?" He shrugged nervously. "It's going around. Maybe talk to your family." I thanked him and left quickly, the weight of the rumors pressing like wet sand on my chest. I didn't have to guess who started it. Claire, Vanessa's sister, the media girl, was doing her part. The trap was closing from all sides. Destroy Mike's reputation, discredit me, and silence anyone who could defend him. When I returned home, I found Claire herself sitting in the living room with her laptop open, nails clicking like small claws on the keyboard. She was on a call. "Yes," she said, her voice bright and false. "Post it right away. Elderly mother-in-law with early memory loss interfering in company business. Make it sound sympathetic. We don't want her to look evil, just unstable." My blood turned to ice. When she saw me, she smiled. "Hi, Mrs. Hart. Lovely weather, isn't it?" I didn't answer. I just walked past her, feeling my pulse thudding in my ears. In that moment, I understood. They weren't just planning a financial scheme. They were rewriting reality itself. That evening, while Mike and Derek worked in the study, I passed by with a dusting rag and paused near the door. I could hear them inside, talking over papers. "Barnes says we're clear," Derek was saying. "The legal drafts are ready. Henry adjusted the balance sheets. Everything will point straight to Mike if someone digs." Mike's voice followed, heavy with hesitation. "I don't like this, Derek. It feels wrong." "This isn't wrong," Derek said smoothly. "It's strategy. Every successful man has to bend a few rules." I pressed a hand to my chest, hardly daring to breathe. I'd heard enough. My son was being lured into complicity, step by step, until he'd be the one holding the noose they designed. I slipped away, heart pounding, and found my old phone in the drawer. I took a quick photo of the folder on the desk through the slightly open door. Adjusted balance, confidential. A tiny light from my phone flashed, reflecting off the glass of the cabinet. It was less than a second, but enough. When I turned, Vanessa was standing behind me. "What are you photographing, Mom?" she asked sweetly. Her smile was soft, but her eyes were knives. I forced a shaky laugh. "Just a casserole recipe on my phone. I thought I'd try something new for Logan." She tilted her head, studying me like a cat studying a trapped mouse. "Be careful with that old phone. Wouldn't want you to lose your photos." Then she walked away, heels clicking against the floor. I exhaled only when I heard the bedroom door upstairs close. That night, I met with Chloe again. Her living room was cluttered with coffee cups and folders. She examined the documents I'd photographed, the recording Nora gave me, and the company papers from earlier. When she looked up, her expression was grave. "Mrs. Hart, this is real. The forged signature, the recording, the ledger, everything lines up. They're building a case to make Mike look like the one committing fraud." I felt my knees weaken. "Then it's worse than I thought." "Much worse," she said softly. "But we can prove it. You'll need multiple copies. Keep one hidden, one with me, and one with someone you trust." I thought for a moment. "Nora," I said. "She's loyal." Chloe handed me 2 more USB drives. "Then start backing everything up tonight. Don't let anyone know what you have." As I walked home, the night air smelled like rain. The streetlights flickered, each one a small warning in the dark. At home, I found Nora polishing silver in the kitchen. I closed the door behind me and whispered, "We're not safe here, but we have proof." Together, we worked quietly, transferring the recordings, the photos, the documents onto 3 USB drives. Nora labeled each with neat handwriting: Truth 1, Truth 2, Truth 3. She hid one inside an empty tea tin, the kind no one ever opens. Another she tucked behind the lining of her apron. The last one I kept close to my chest, beneath my sweater, like a heartbeat. When we finished, she looked at me with eyes full of quiet strength. "Whatever happens, you won't face it alone." "Thank you," I said, my throat tight, "for believing me." She smiled. "I've worked in this house for 15 years. I see everything. Sometimes being invisible lets you see the most." Her words hit deep. For the first time in months, I didn't feel completely powerless. We, 2 women nobody noticed, had become witnesses, investigators, guardians of truth. The days that followed felt like walking on thin ice. Vanessa was suddenly kinder, bringing me tea, asking about my health. Too kind. I knew she was watching. Derek visited often, all charm and false laughter. "Mom, you're quiet these days," he said once, his tone teasing. "Plotting something." I smiled faintly. "Just baking pies, dear." He laughed, not realizing how close to the truth he was. I was baking a trap, one that would serve cold justice. Each night, Logan slipped into my room, whispering updates from upstairs. "Mom keeps calling Uncle Derek when Dad's asleep," he said. "She said something about a vote and a presentation." I took his small hand. "That meeting is when they'll try to ruin your father. But we'll be ready." He nodded, brave as ever. "I'll sit with you that day. You shouldn't be alone." Tears stung my eyes. "You're my little soldier," I whispered. By the week's end, tension crackled through the house like static. Every knock at the door made my heart race. Every glance from Vanessa felt like a spotlight. But beneath my fear, there was purpose, a steady flame that refused to die. I wasn't just a helpless old woman anymore. I was watching, listening, collecting. Every whisper, every lie, every forged page had a home now, in those small metal drives that could expose everything. The night before the shareholder meeting, Logan slipped me a folded note under my teacup. In his messy handwriting, he'd written, "Grandma, I'll sit with you. I'll be brave. Promise." I pressed the note to my heart and looked out the window. Across the yard, Vanessa's shadow moved behind the curtains, her voice faint through the glass. She was laughing, confident, certain of her victory. She didn't know that downstairs, 2 quiet women and a 12-year-old boy were already dismantling her empire, one whisper, one recording, one heartbeat at a time. The day of the meeting arrived dressed like a storm pretending to be calm. The sky was a washed-out gray over the city, the kind that hides lightning until it strikes. I woke before dawn, my heart already pacing faster than the clock on my wall. In the mirror, my reflection looked small but sharp, hair pinned neatly, hands trembling just a little. I tucked the USB drive inside the lining of my coat, over my chest, where a cross used to hang. Faith had taken a new shape now, a flash drive full of truth. Logan peeked into my room, already dressed in his school clothes. "Grandma," he whispered, "today's the meeting, right?" I nodded. "Yes, sweetheart." He stepped closer and slipped something into my pocket. A folded note. "For luck," he said. When I opened it, I saw only 3 words in his uneven handwriting. "Don't be scared." For a moment, I wasn't. The company's headquarters stood downtown, glass and steel gleaming like a monument to control. Inside, everything smelled of money. Polished floors, expensive perfume, the faint tang of coffee brewed for people who never finished their cups. Mike met me in the lobby, looking confused. "Mom, why are you here?" "Because family business belongs to family," I said gently. "And I'm still family." He sighed but didn't argue. He was too tired to fight me. His tie was crooked, his eyes ringed with sleeplessness. The guilt in them was faint but growing, like a bruise spreading under skin. We rode the elevator together in silence. On the way up, I saw our reflections in the mirrored walls. A mother and son, both carrying secrets neither wanted to speak aloud. When the doors opened, the conference room stretched wide and cold, its long table gleaming under white light. Vanessa stood near the head of the table, impeccable in a cream blazer, her hair smooth and perfect. Derek lounged in a chair beside her, smirking like he'd already won. Claire sat at the back, tapping away at her phone. And there, near the corner, was Nora, disguised as a catering assistant, pushing a cart with coffee and pastries. Her eyes met mine for a fraction of a second, steady, quiet assurance. The second USB was safe in her pocket. The meeting began. Philip Barnes, the slick lawyer Derek had hired, stood to address the board. "We've reviewed recent financial irregularities," he said, clicking through slides projected onto the massive screen. "Unfortunately, the inconsistencies traced directly back to Mr. Michael Hart's approval signatures." Gasps rippled around the table. The board members, all in suits and polite suspicion, turned to Mike. He froze, eyes darting to the images. Spreadsheets, graphs, forged signatures that mimicked his hand too perfectly. Vanessa's voice cut in smoothly, trembling with false sorrow. "We only discovered this a week ago. I begged Michael to be honest, but he's been under so much pressure." "Stop," I said. The word was small, but sharp enough to cut through her performance. All eyes turned to me. The room grew still. Vanessa blinked, startled. "Mom, this is a private meeting." "No," I said, stepping forward. "It's a meeting of truth." Derek laughed softly. "Oh, please. Mrs. Hart, with all due respect, this is corporate business. Maybe you should rest." But I didn't move. My fingers found the USB inside my coat, and I held it up between us like a sliver of light. "If we're talking about truth, you might want to hear all of it." Barnes frowned. "Security." "No," said one of the board members, a gray-haired man who had known my husband years ago. "Let her speak." So I did. My voice shook at first, then steadied with each sentence. I told them about the forged papers, the secret calls, the midnight deals. I named Derek. I named Barnes. I described the nights I spent gathering proof while everyone else slept. They listened, some skeptical, some stunned, until Vanessa broke her silence with a laugh. "This is ridiculous," she said, tone dripping sugar. "She's confused. You've all seen the articles about her memory. My sister tried to keep them offline." That's when Nora moved. She rolled her cart closer and quietly handed a small device to the technician controlling the presentation screen. "Play this," she said. The man hesitated, looking to me. I nodded. He plugged it in. A voice filled the room, clear, cold, undeniable. "After this meeting, Mike loses every ounce of credibility. The company will be ours." Gasps. A few heads whipped toward Vanessa. She froze. Then came Derek's unmistakable chuckle through the speakers. "And that old woman? She won't even be able to tie her shoes without people thinking she's lost her mind." The words hung in the air like smoke. Mike's face drained of color. "Derek," he whispered, "you—" But Derek was already on his feet. "That's doctored," he barked. "Some cheap trick from your delusional mother." I stepped forward, sliding the second USB across the table. "Then maybe the video will help." On the screen, security footage appeared. Grainy, but clear enough. Vanessa and Derek sitting in a corner booth at the cafe, their heads close together. A man, Harold Price, the accountant, handed them a folder labeled Adjusted Balance. And then Vanessa's own voice, sharp and unfiltered. Once the fake files are uploaded, he'll look guilty. We'll say he panicked. No one will ever suspect us. The room erupted. One board member swore under his breath. Another reached for his phone to call security. Vanessa's mask shattered. She lunged forward, slamming her hand on the table. "This is illegal. You can't record private conversations. Neither can you forge signatures or commit fraud," Chloe's voice said, suddenly from the doorway. She walked in with confident steps, holding a printed report. "Everything has been verified by an independent attorney," she said, handing the papers to the board chair. "And Mrs. Hart's evidence is time-stamped, traceable, and backed up. You can confirm the metadata yourselves." Barnes tried to speak, but his voice failed. Derek's jaw locked. Vanessa looked around wildly, searching for sympathy, but found only eyes turned cold. Then a soft voice rose from the corner. "I saw them," said a boy's voice. All heads turned. Logan stood by the door beside Nora, clutching his backpack. "I saw Mom and Uncle Derek meeting that man, twice. They told me not to tell Dad." His voice trembled, but didn't break. "I'm sorry." For a moment, time stopped. Even Vanessa seemed to shrink, her lipstick trembling at the edges. "Logan, honey, you're confused." "No," he said, his small voice like a hammer striking glass. "I'm not." The door opened again, and two men in plain suits stepped inside. Quiet, efficient, badges flashing. "Detective Moore," the taller one said. "We've been monitoring reports of corporate fraud tied to this firm. We'll need to speak with Mrs. Reed, Mr. Reed, and Mr. Barnes immediately." The silence that followed was the sound of walls crumbling. Vanessa's face drained of color. "Michael," she whispered, reaching for him. "You believe me, don't you?" He didn't answer. He just stepped back. The detectives read their rights as they cuffed Derek and Barnes. Vanessa tried to resist, but her voice cracked into a sob. "This isn't fair. She turned my own child against me." I looked at her, feeling no triumph, only a tired kind of peace. "You did that yourself." The metallic click of handcuffs echoed like punctuation. The projector light caught the glint of silver, reflecting it across the wall. A fleeting flash of justice. When it was over, people began to leave. Some whispering apologies, others avoiding eye contact. Mike stayed seated, staring at his hands. His voice, when it came, was hoarse. "Mom, I'm sorry." I placed a trembling hand on his shoulder. "You don't have to be. You just have to start seeing again." He nodded, tears gathering in his eyes. For the first time in years, I saw my son. Not the executive, not the husband. Just the boy who once promised he'd never let me down. Logan ran into my arms, burying his face in my coat. "You did it, Grandma," he whispered. "You stopped the bad guys." I smiled, though tears blurred my vision. "No, sweetheart, we did." Across the room, Nora gathered the empty coffee cups, her quiet smile steady as always. Chloe packed her folders, giving me a small nod, the kind of nod women give when they recognize strength in one another. Outside, the rain finally began to fall. It was light at first, then heavier, washing the city clean. As we stepped onto the sidewalk, Mike held an umbrella over me. For the first time in months, he reached for my hand. "Let's go home, Mom," he said softly. And for once, the word home didn't feel like a place where I wasn't wanted. It felt like something being rebuilt. Brick by truth, by love, by courage. The storm had come and gone, but its rain carried something new, the quiet sound of beginnings. The courthouse smelled faintly of old wood and paper, the scent of long stories finally coming to an end. It had been a month since the day the truth cracked open at the shareholders' meeting. Since then, the city had buzzed with headlines about corporate fraud and betrayal, while I had gone back to a quieter rhythm. Morning coffee, walks with Logan to school, evenings where the silence no longer hurt. But this morning was different. Today was the sentencing. When I stepped into the courtroom, my knees trembled, but not from fear, from the sheer weight of everything that had led us here. Nora sat beside me in her neatly pressed uniform, hands folded, calm as a mountain. On my other side, Logan fidgeted with a small wooden cross he'd made in Sunday school, his fingers tracing it over and over. Across the aisle, the accused sat in a line: Vanessa, Derek, Barnes, and Henry. They looked smaller than I remembered, stripped of their arrogance, their power, their masks. Vanessa's hair, once perfectly styled, hung limp around her face. When she saw me, her eyes filled with something between hatred and regret. "You ruined everything, Mrs. Hart," she hissed, as the guards guided her to her seat. I met her gaze, my voice soft. "No, Vanessa, you did." The hearing began. The prosecutor, a sharp-eyed woman named Claire McKinney, presented the evidence: the recordings, the forged documents, the video files. My voice played through the speakers, calm and steady, narrating what I had seen. Then came the audio of Vanessa and Derek's plan. The same words that had once haunted my nights, now echoing through the courtroom like a ghost-turned witness. Mike sat ahead of me at the front, stiff, jaw clenched. He hadn't looked at Vanessa once. Every sound, the rustle of paper, the thud of a gavel, seemed to strike him directly in the chest. I could see it, the mix of shame and relief of a man who had finally woken up, but too late to stop the nightmare. When the prosecutor called Logan to testify, my heart twisted. He stood at the witness stand, small in his pressed shirt. But his voice, oh, his voice was steady. "I saw them," he said. "I heard them talk about Dad. They said they were going to make him look bad so they could take everything." He swallowed hard, but didn't look away. The judge, a middle-aged man with silver glasses, nodded gravely. "You did the right thing, son." I reached for Nora's hand and squeezed it. She was crying quietly. Tears of pride, of shared survival. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for. The judge rose, papers in hand, his voice echoing through the chamber. "After reviewing all evidence presented," he said, "the court finds the defendants guilty of fraud, forgery, and conspiracy to defraud a corporation." Vanessa flinched. "Mrs. Vanessa Reed," the judge continued, "you are sentenced to 12 years in prison." A gasp rippled through the room. "Mr. Derek Reed, 15 years. Mr. Philip Barnes, 8 years. Mr. Henry Price, 6 years. The court also grants restitution to Mr. Michael Hart and full reinstatement of his corporate standing." The sound of the gavel struck the air, heavy and final. For a moment, I just sat there, breathing. It was over. Vanessa turned once more, eyes sharp as glass. "You'll regret this," she whispered. But her voice no longer carried any weight. The guards led her away, her heels echoing down the corridor until they disappeared completely. Outside, sunlight flooded the courthouse steps. Real sunlight, not filtered through blinds or glass towers, but open and golden, like forgiveness itself. Mike walked beside me, silent, until finally he spoke. "Mom," he said, his voice cracking, "I don't know how to start apologizing." I stopped and turned to him. "You don't need to start with words, Michael. Start with how you live from now on." He nodded, tears sliding down his cheeks, and for the first time in years, he looked like my son again. The boy who once promised to always protect his mother and keep his family safe. Logan ran ahead down the steps, his laughter light, his backpack bouncing. I looked at him and smiled. The child who had whispered, "Grandma, it's a trap," had become the light that saved us all. Weeks passed. Slowly, the house changed. The cold spaces warmed again. The small storage room I had once been exiled to was transformed. Mike insisted on it. He repainted the walls a soft ivory, replaced the broken lamp with a hanging light that glowed like a sunrise. He called it your room, but I called it something else. The house with light. We began having family dinners again, not grand or fancy, but honest. Mike would pull out my chair, and Logan would chatter endlessly about school, soccer, and a stray dog he'd started feeding near the park. Nora joined us, too, no longer as a housekeeper, but as family. One evening, as the table glowed under warm lamplight, Mike lifted his glass and said, "To truth, to courage, to the women who saw everything when I refused to look." He looked at me then, his eyes shining with quiet gratitude. I raised my glass, too. "To new beginnings," I said. Logan giggled. "And to Grandma, the real detective." We all laughed, and for the first time the sound filled every corner of the house without echoing against emptiness. But healing wasn't just laughter. It was rebuilding what fear had hollowed out. I started volunteering at the parish with Father Thomas again. Together with Chloe and Nora, we launched a small foundation, the Silver Lantern Fund, to help elderly women who had been pushed aside by their own families. Every Saturday morning, our church hall filled with voices, women sharing stories that had once been whispered in shame, abandoned mothers, widows treated like burdens, grandmothers raising grandchildren alone. Some cried, some laughed for the first time in years. "I thought I was invisible," one woman told me, her voice trembling. "But seeing you, I realize maybe I still matter." I smiled and took her hands. "You do. You always have." We raised money through bake sales, concerts, and small donations. Father Thomas said it best at the first ceremony. From darkness came truth, and from truth came light. And indeed, every lantern we lit in the parish that day felt like a heartbeat, one that belonged to every woman who had ever been silenced and finally found her voice. That night, I stood by the window in my little room. The same window that once faced only shadows now glowed with reflections of the house. The kitchen lit, laughter echoing faintly, the smell of cinnamon from the pie cooling on the counter. Mike was tucking Logan into bed, his voice gentle as he read a story aloud. Nora hummed in the kitchen, cleaning up. The home felt alive again, not just full, but whole. I touched the windowsill and whispered, "We did it, Henry." My husband's name. Your family survived. The air was still, but I swear the lamp flickered softly, not from the wind, but as if something unseen had nodded back. Later that week, I was invited to speak at a community event in the parish hall. The microphone trembled in my hand, but when I looked at the faces before me, old women, young mothers, even men who had come to listen, my fear melted away. "I used to think age meant silence," I began, "that when you're old, your voice stops mattering. But silence is just another kind of death. I learned that even when no one believes you, not your son, not your family, not your world, truth still breathes inside you, waiting to be heard." I paused, scanning the audience. Sometimes courage doesn't roar. Sometimes it whispers. And sometimes that whisper saves a family. The room was quiet. Then applause began. Soft at first, then swelling, echoing off the high ceilings. Among the crowd, I saw Mike standing at the back, smiling proudly. Beside him, Logan clapped so hard his hands turned red. For a moment, I felt the world align. The past, the pain, the light. All of it weaving into one simple truth. I was no longer invisible. That evening, as we walked home under a violet sky, Logan tugged at my sleeve. "Grandma," he said, "do you think we'll always have light in our house now?" I looked down at him, his face glowing in the lamplight. "Yes, sweetheart," I said, "because light isn't in the walls. It's in the people who stay when the darkness tries to take over." He smiled and squeezed my hand. "Then we'll never lose it." And I believed him. As we stepped through the front door, the golden glow from the living room spilled out to meet us. Warm, steady, alive. The house had changed. But more than that, We had. And for the first time in a long, long while, I knew. The story didn't end with revenge. It ended with light.